Thanks for joining us for part two of the story of Lance and RuthAnn. He left Denver and he was headed for his orders in San Diego. He had to be there the following day and he was driving. He had to drive through the mountains. And I sat all day just being sad. And I went over to hang out with his brother and just told him, I really fell for Lance while he was in town. And he didn't ask for my number and I didn't offer it. I went home and a short while later, my phone rings and it's Lance. He had made it all the way to Las Vegas and he then called me and he said, on my way out of Denver, I heard Clint Black, a bad goodbye, and I missed you then. And I thought about you all the way to Las Vegas, and I couldn't wait to get here and call my brother and get your phone number. He told me that he was staying at a hotel and they had offered him tickets to go see some comedian, some Ellen DeSomebody, somebody, he said. And I said, Ellen DeGeneres? And he said, yeah. And I said, oh my gosh, she's hilarious. You should go see her. And he said, well, I don't really feel like going to a show. I would rather be here talking to you. He stayed and talked on the phone with me. And I was just so happy to hear from him. I honestly didn't think that I would hear from him again because I had, since we were so honest with each other, I pretty much told him I wasn't looking for anything. I'm not even going to say pretty much. I told him I wasn't looking for a relationship. So I hadn't told him how I felt about him. So I was being honest probably about everything except how I felt about him, that I had already fallen for him. Anyway, we talked about it that evening and discovered that we had the same feelings for each other. And so the next day he made it to San Diego and got his orders and got into his barracks. And he would call me every 1 to 3 days. There was a bowling alley right next door or nearby where his barracks were, and he would go there and take cash with him because this was back in the early 90s. Nobody had cell phones then. We all had landlines, and in the Navy, things were a lot more challenging because they were in and out of port all the time. And so on the base, they had this payphone area where you could go in and you could make your phone calls. And then when you left, they would tell you how much you owed. Well, there would be a count on the phone saying this is how much your phone call is. So Lance would bring money with him and he would call me and we would just talk anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. Usually, I believe that there was at least 1 4-hour conversation in there. We talked so much and we talked about everything. There was nothing that was off limits. If it was on our mind, we brought it up and we talked about it and we shared with each other what we thought. And it was just the coolest thing. So probably about, I don't know, I want to say he'd only been gone from Denver for maybe a week and a half. So I'd known him at that point for 2.5, 3 weeks. And he called me and he said, I got something I need to tell you. And it took him a while. I think it took about an hour. He finally said, I love you. And I knew what he was going to say, but hearing it, it still scared me because I didn't think I was ready. I still was, I mean, I really liked him. I fell so hard for him while he was in town. And I felt like this could be the real thing. But because of everything that I'd been through in my life already, I just didn't know if I was willing to put my heart through that again. And he was so far away. It just seemed like the odds were against us. So he said it, and I waited probably another hour, hour and a half, but I couldn't even say it to him right away. it was the end of the conversation when I finally said it. And I said it really quietly. I love you. Like, maybe if I say it like that, I didn't really say it and it doesn't count. But he heard it. And that kind of changed our conversations after that. So then we started talking about our future together. And it was something that I didn't share with anyone because I had known people who had gotten engaged after they'd only known each other a few months. And I thought that they were crazy, and I told them they were crazy. So I wasn't going to share my thoughts with anyone else because I didn't want anyone to tell me that I was crazy. I knew what I was feeling. I knew that this was real. I knew that this was something that I needed to see through to see where it took me. And I didn't want anyone else's feedback. I didn't want anyone else's opinions. I know myself well enough. Even at that young age, I knew myself well enough. So we started talking more about our future. And we decided that I was going to go out there and visit him for a few days and see how that went. I'm going to be on his turf now, and we're going to be doing the things that he wants to do. And we're going to be seeing how he lives his life. And let's see how this fits together with my life. I went out there, spent 3 days with him. We went to Disneyland. He took me to see the ocean. I had never seen the ocean before. We went to Coronado Island. We went to a movie. 3 days, you can't do a whole lot of stuff. And Disneyland, I think, was about a 100-mile drive. And so we spent the whole day together driving up there, spending the day at Disneyland, and then driving back. So after my 3 days in San Diego, I flew back to Colorado, and we began talking about me moving out there to live with him. I did start telling people that I was going to move to San Diego and I was going to live with this guy because he had gotten an apartment with one of his friends. And so I'm telling my friends, I'm going to move out to San Diego and I'm going to live with this guy. And they're like, what are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? You don't know this guy. You've known him for not even 2 months yet. And you're going to move out there and live with him? He could be a mass murderer for all you know. And I'm like, pretty sure he's not a mass murderer. But okay. And then Lance and I started talking about actually just getting married because our conversations just continued, and our time together when I visited him was even better than it had been when we had spent those first 10 days together. I knew so much about him. I knew more about him in 2 months than I knew about the guy that I had lived with for 2 years. We just talked about everything, and we had the same hopes and dreams and fears and hurts. It was just crazy how well we got along and all of the things that we were able to talk about. So we decided to get married. I think I might have told my mom, get married today. But we didn't ask anyone's advice. We didn't ask anyone's opinions. We figured that we knew well enough what we were doing. So we just did it. So one of the guys that I worked with, I knew he was the one that we kind of all called Dad. Tom is his name. And he had been married for over 20 years. And I knew that he and his wife had only known each other for, I think, 3 months when they got married. So I asked him, would you go down to the courthouse with me on lunch so that I can get an absentee application to send to Lance? And he said, yes. So we went down to the courthouse. I got the absentee application. This was on a Monday, sent it overnight to Lance. And while we were on our way back to work from the post office to work, we were in an accident. Somebody turned in front of me at a light. They turned left in front of me. I was going straight, and I didn't have time to stop. I looked left, they were at the light. I looked right. When I looked back, they were in front of me. And it was one of those full-size BMWs with really dark tinted windows. And I couldn't see if there was anyone inside the car. And I was headed straight for the passenger door. So I quick swerved to the right so that I wouldn't hit the passenger door, and I hit above the right front tire, and I totaled my car. I think I blacked out for a little bit. When I opened my eyes, we were sitting with steam coming out of the car. I could see that the front end of the car was all crunched up. The rear view mirror was gone and there was blood there. Turns out Tom had taken out the rear view mirror with his head because he was older than I was, and I didn't feel comfortable telling him to put on his seatbelt. So he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. I was wearing mine, but my shoulder harness didn't lock, and my steering wheel was all jacked up, and I could tell that I had hit it with my chest. And I was driving a stick shift. So I had my right hand on the stick. And so, like, the whole right side of my body, I ended up having problems with from that. I got home that evening after spending the day in the emergency room. We were taken by ambulance, Tom and I both. And I got home and didn't have a way to get a hold of Lance. So I actually got a hold of his dad. And when Lance called his dad told him what had happened. And so Lance called me. And I was actually very thankful to hear from Lance too, because at the time there were fires in San Diego, and it was before the internet was widely used. And I didn't know where these fires were, and I didn't know if he was in any danger. And so he called. We were both worried about each other. We were both relieved. That was on a Monday. He got the absentee application on Tuesday, got it notarized, sent it back to me on Wednesday with his ID. I got it on Thursday. On Friday, I went down to the courthouse and got the actual marriage license. And at the time in Colorado, I don't know how it is now, but you didn't have to have a ceremony. All you had to do was get this marriage license, both of you sign it and have two witnesses sign it, and then it was legally binding. So Lance and I decided that was what we were going to do, because I'm not much on ceremony. I don't like standing up in front of people. I don't like all eyes on me. And he was okay with that because he just wanted to get married. And so I told my friend this, and she said, "You cannot do that. You have to have a ceremony." And I said, "Fine, we'll do a ceremony." And I said, "Lance, I guess we're going to do a ceremony." So I found like a justice of the peace, and my friend said we could do it at her house. And so this man that we hired agreed to come over to the apartment that she lived in, and we were going to have it there. And I said, "Okay, but it's going to be very casual. We're just going to wear jeans." And she said, "Oh my gosh, you cannot wear jeans. You're getting married. You have to wear a dress." And I said, "All right, fine. I guess I'm wearing a dress, Lance. So bring something nice to wear." So my friend and I went shopping, and I got a $20 dress, and we went and got some flowers. And up until then, Lance and I had just been talking about getting married when he came to town. We hadn't completely decided that that was the plan, but because I'm a planner and I know if we're going to do something, I need to have a plan in place for it. So that was why I went through the whole process of getting everything ready just in case. And by the end of the week, we had decided my car accident, the fires, those were things that made us feel so concerned for each other. And we realized then we really mean so much to each other. We definitely are getting married. So on Saturday, I went to the airport to get him. And this was the old Stapleton Airport. This was before DIA, and it was before 9/11. So you could still go to the gate. And I remember I drove there and in my rental car because my car was totaled. And I was in so much pain from my car accident. I didn't have any broken bones, but I had a lot of soft tissue injury and I was on muscle relaxers, not when I was driving. So I was really in a lot of pain that day because I didn't take my muscle relaxer to go to the airport to pick him up. So I just remember I had to walk so far just to get to the gate. And it hurt for me to sit down. So I was just standing there waiting for him. And everybody started getting off the plane. And there were more people getting off the plane. And there were more people getting off the plane. And then all of a sudden, there was no one left. And there was no Lance.
Did you see the crew come off then? There's the pilot. That must be the end.
I actually did see some of the crew get off the
Oh,
plane. Thanks for joining me, Jenna, and thanks for helping me tell this story. I'll see you next time.
alrighty. Bye.